Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Mindset Matters, with MAPS coaches Jen Davis and Sarah Detmore. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be available within 24 hours on the MAPS Group YouTube channel. You may access the YouTube channel from your Zoom account confirmation email, and we will also share the link in the chat momentarily. Currently, everyone's on mute. We do value group participation, so we ask that if you have any questions for your coach, please type them into the chat box. Your questions will be addressed by your coaches throughout the webinar. Following the meeting, if you have any questions about today's call or our coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's all for me, coaches. Take it away.
Rodrigo, thank you so much. And Jen, look at all of our friends.
I love this.
We've missed you guys. Yeah. So guys, Jen and I are so excited to be here with you today and talk through, gosh, what a year it's been to be a buyer agent. I mean, guys, raise your hands, even if you don't work with buyers, like what a year it's been to be in real estate in general. Have we not had a crazy couple of years, especially this year? And y'all come on camera if you're decent, right? We want to see you. We like Rodrigo just said, this is an interactive webinar. We want to share this time with you and really make sure we can pour into your business. I always love when I see Jess on here. Hi, Jess. I know that you can be off camera. Amy Bergen is here. We see some friends that we've seen for a while. Bia, we know that you've been with us before. So we're excited to have you guys here. And we're going to talk today just about, again, knowing that it can be defeating for us as agents sometimes to stay in a positive headspace and mindset with our buyer clients when we're in a super active seller's market. So we're going to talk through just some three kind of best practices as buyer agents to use when we're wanting to stay in a positive mindset space with our buyer clients in the active market that we're in. And guys, I don't know about you, but I don't know that things are going to change significantly for us in the market anytime soon. Jen, what do you think?
You know, Sarah, I think all projections look to be a very similar year next year, right? I think that we may start to see some adjustments about this time next year, or maybe into, what would that be, 2023 is kind of what I've heard. And even then, I don't think it's significant, right? I don't think prices are coming back down. I don't think interest rates are going to drastically increase.
Yeah.
And I don't see a huge influx of inventory. So I think this is our new reality. And we want to talk about, how do we make sure that we're utilizing best practices? How do we make sure that we protect our mindset and the mindset of our clients?
Absolutely. And before we get into that great stuff, let's tell these folks who we are. So Jen, tell us who you are and where you're from. All the wonderful things about you.
Well, I'm Jen Davis. I am the CEO of Holt Homes Group out of Springfield, Missouri. We will close right around 550 units this year. The interesting thing about our team is we run a team dependent model. So Sarah, similar to the Loken Group, and you'll get into this, we provide a majority of the leads and we provide a majority of the administrative support. So what that looks like is each of our agents will close somewhere around 85 deals per year. So when we look at it, our agents have a high production number because we take so many of those pieces off of them. And as I said, I'm with Holt Homes Group. I'm also a MAPS coach. Right. I have the pleasure of co-coaching a group program with you, the Mega Buyer Agent. And I'm getting ready to transition Holt Homes Group into the Veris Network. So we just brought on a new team and we're super excited about the announcement this week. And so we'll have some exciting news to share kind of coming up. So Sarah, to kind of tell us about you and where you're at.
Awesome. And really excited for where you guys are headed in business, Jen. That's awesome. So I'm Sarah Detmore. I am the VP of our buyer agent team here with the Loken Group out of Houston, Texas. And just like Jen shared with Holt Homes Group, soon to be Veris Network, we run a very, very large team dependent model here in Houston. We were close to 90 agents on our team. Of course, not all 90 are in production, so that's okay. Although maybe one day we'll see. Yet of the 90 on our team, you know, we do have a large sales force as well, a very large inside sales team that supports our outside agents. Amy Bergen on this call is one of our fantastic top producing buyer agents, so give Amy a wave. You know, our buyer agents are, you know, producing anywhere from, you know, 50 to upwards of of 90 closings a year. And we're looking for ways to increase that year over year through different leverage opportunities. So with that being said, though, our team as a whole, we close over 2,000, actually over 2,500 units a year. This year specifically, though, we're right at 450 buy-side transactions alone. So we run a very, very big buyer team operation as well. Which is super exciting. So all things buyers is kind of where we're headed today. But like I said before, if you're on this call joining us and you're like, I've never worked a buyer in my life, I only do listings, I don't even work in production, that's okay too, because your mindset is important no matter what you do in business, right? So let's just jump into this real quick, Jen. And I know that, again, the purpose of this context or the meeting today is for us to talk through ways that we want to stay positive in a positive mindset space, specifically around working with buyers in a super active seller's market. So why don't we talk through kind of the first step there is we have to make a mindset shift. As the agent, we have to make sure that we're practicing, ways in which we stay in a positive mindset. So let's talk through that a bit.
Sarah, I think one of the things you and I have talked a lot about over the last year is that we can look at it two ways. We can look at it as that or three ways. You can look at it as it's a strong market, right? It's a seller's market, or it's a skill set market. And so what I like to look at if we're talking about making that mindset shift is looking at it and presenting it in a way to our buyers that it is a strong market. However, for us as the agent, it's a skill set market, right? So if I want my buyers to compete and win, I've got to increase and improve my skills daily. That's what it is, right? Gary Keller often talks about that we have to be at 10,000 hours of doing one thing to kind of get to mastery. As the market changes, those hours are ever changing. And so what I think, in this first bullet point, if you look at shift page 24, you can't control the market, but you can control your outlook and your response to it. So if I tell a buyer that it's a seller's market, they automatically feel like they're on the defense, right? Like they're already at a loss. So I can choose the words, we're in a strong market. It is strong for the seller. It's also, guys, strong for the buyer, right? We still have historically low interest rates, right? Like it is still, the affordability factor is still there for our clients to be able to purchase a home right now. And so changing some of that verbiage, right? Looking at, instead of saying, we can't find a house, there's no inventory. When by the time it gets on MLS, it's too late. Yes, it is. By the time it gets onto the MLS, it's too late. So how can we find inventory not on the MLS, right? How can we secure our clients the dream home that they're looking for? And then when we look at our goals for the next year, right? Sarah and I, you and I talked about this ahead of getting on the call. You made a great point. You're talking to your agents about what has to happen. If you've said you want 8 closings in January, what does that look like to set you up for 8 closings? Well, I'm pretty sure it means you have to have 8 under contract to close in January.
At least.
I'm pretty sure at least closings in January, at minimum, you must have 8 accepted contracts with a January closing date in there. So when we look at the goal being non-negotiable, one of the things that we have to do, especially this time of year, is increase those activities, right? We're assuming that everyone that's here today has a high level of skill set, or you're chasing that because that's why you're here. You're investing the time in yourself to improve your skill. So when we're at a gap between where we want to be, where our goal is and where we actually are, we look at, is it a skill set issue or it is an activity issue? Mm-hmm. Most of the time, this time of year, it's an activity issue.
Jen, what I love what you shared with the first bullet point about how we can't control the market, we can control our outlook and our response to it. Very small changes in just the language that we use with our clients can have the biggest impact on just the entire process from start to finish. And we'll get into that a bit next on the next slide. Is one of the, I think, a really important mindset to be in. We can look at things from a proactive space or a reactive space. And guys, I think we can all agree, and maybe not all of us, but most of us can agree that as buyer agents in real estate, we've kind of been conditioned to always be reactive. We respond to the client based on what they say that they need. We respond to the client, or we respond to maybe we submit an offer for a client, and then we then have to figure out what we could have done differently after we've already lost out on an offer. So we're naturally in a very reactive space, and sometimes with that reactivity could cause us to be emotionally tilted. Right? As we love being happy as buyer agents. Anyone else want to be happy all the time as a buyer agent? We're high eyes. That's what we want to do, right? Stacy knows what's up. So, and Tracy, I saw you raise your hand too. And when we constantly have to tell our buyers, oh gosh, Amy, your offer wasn't accepted again. We have to call our buyer again, over and over again, and give bad news. That weighs on us. And we might not even recognize it until it's too late. So where I'm going with this is we can look at our business in one of two ways. We can be proactive about the things that we're doing, about the conversations that we're having, about how we're future pacing our clients in conversation, or we can wait and be reactive and see what happens. It's easy for buyer agents to go, you know what, Tammy, I'm going to put you on a search, and then when the right house pops up, we'll go see it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we're being very reactive. As opposed to, what if Caroline tells her buyer, you know what, I'm going to work every single day to do these 3 things to find a home for you. Because in most cases, guys, your buyers just want to buy one house. And when we're proactive about it, we're expending the same energy. We're working on being proactive or working in a reactive space. We're still working, but the way in which we feel about the work we're doing could feel different. So I'm going to advance the slide and keep talking here. Jen, you're kind of known for this non-update update. Right. I know that's a big piece for you guys. So what would a non-update update sound like to a buyer?
Well, Sarah, we're at the company where we encourage people to rip off and duplicate things, right? So the non-update update came from my friend Laura on Mary Chinham King's team. And what they do is if you look at your buyers, they're sitting at home or at work, and they're thinking, what's Sarah doing for me, right? I can't find a home. I haven't looked at a home in 2 or 3 days. I haven't heard anything from her. What they may not know is that Sarah is working behind the scenes. So a non-update update for me would be, I would call Sarah if she's my buyer and say, hey, Sarah, it's Jen. I know that we haven't seen a new home pop up on the MLS in a little bit. I just wanted to let you know that my team and I are actually calling around the neighborhood that you'd like to be in. I know that you want to be in Ravenwood subdivision. And so we have spent the last 2 days, number one, mailing out letters to the neighborhood to see if there are anybody that is interested in selling. I've also pulled a call list from the neighborhood, keeping in mind the do not call list. I'm cross-referencing it. And we're making those calls, and we're seeing what inventory we can come up with for you, right? So the non-update update is, I'm telling Sarah what I'm doing. I don't actually have a home to show her. I've not done anything for Sarah in the respect that I've not gotten her into a home. I've not shown her anything, but Sarah now knows what I'm doing, and she can appreciate it and think, she's not sitting there thinking, I wonder what Jen's doing, right? She must be working with these other buyers. I haven't heard anything from her in a few days. Maybe I'll get on this website and look for more houses, right? I'm tying Sarah and I together, and I'm strengthening that relationship.
And again, that's such a big, important piece, Jen, of the proactive communication, because I think it's easy for us to assume that buyers know what we're doing. Guys, most buyers think we live at the house we're going to show them. Has that ever happened to you? Like, how come you can't show it to me in 5 minutes? Well, I don't live there. So like that doesn't make sense for me. So, and buyers are great, make no mistake of that. Yet the non-update update, it's an update on something. And you can do a non-update update with a buyer anytime, a buyer who's under contract, right? I know things happen behind the scenes. They don't know what's happening behind the scenes. They're going to go, well, gosh, Kristen must have forgotten about me because I haven't heard from her in a couple of days. Well, Kristen's probably negotiating your repairs right now. But if they don't know that, they assume the worst. That's just, again, it's human nature. So the non-update update is such an important piece of proactive communication to help keep your clients connected to how you're being a fiduciary for them. Well, and especially right now with, go ahead, Jen. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, they talk about in that book, Fierce Conversations, conversations are the relationship, right?
Yes.
And so the better the conversation, number one, the higher level of conversion that you have, the more likely that buyer is to utilize your services again. And you're looking around corners. Those buyers that don't, once they're under contract, if you're proactively calling them, guess what? They're not calling you on the nights and weekends, right? If you can time block those non-update updates for those buyers that are under contract, helps you bulletproof the transaction. And it honestly kind of helps you avoid some of those inconvenient calls that maybe you want to spend time with your family.
Jen, I love that you shared that too. And guys, I'll share this with you. My MAPS coach, who I adore, by the way, he and I've been in a business relationship for 4 years, a little over 4 years. Anyway, side note, he asked me a couple years ago, Sarah, what would have to happen for your buyer to never have to call you and ask a question? So my knee-jerk reaction to that was, that's unrealistic. Buyers have the dumbest questions. And he's like, well, think about it.
Mm-hmm.
If I choose to be so proactive in my communication with my buyer at any point in the process, from the time I meet them for a strategy session until they're getting the keys after closing, what would have to happen for them to never ask a question? How would they feel? Like, what would their experience be like through that entire process? How would my experience be not having to default and be reactive to the times they call me on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. about something that I can't even do on a Saturday, a lending question, a title question, right? So think about that. That's a really interesting thing to think through of how we can communicate in such a proactive way that our buyers feel so confident from start to finish. So.
Well, and those questions that you get over and over again, that's the gap in your buyer presentation, right? Like, I know that if I see that I'm getting the same question multiple times, that's not that the client is asking inappropriate questions or things that they should know. It's I've not done a great job presenting what happens next.
There's
right?
information missing. Yeah.
And that's on me as their fiduciary. Okay, yeah. I'll let you go. I'm sorry.
I know we have 13 minutes left and we got a lot to cover still. So guys, this is where Jen and I could talk forever. So forgive us. Okay. Asking hard questions though is a big part of being proactive. So think of it this way, guys and gals, have you ever shown a buyer a couple houses, let's say maybe 3 houses on a Saturday afternoon. And after 3 houses are like, you know what? Ashley, these houses just didn't work for me. And you're like, okay, great. We'll find some more. We'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye. And then time passes. And then you call Ashley a week later and she's like, oh, I bought a house with someone else. Right. Guys, when our buyers are engaging in the process with us and we have some kind of block that's holding them back from progressing to the next step, we've got to take a step back and ask some hard questions to find out what we're missing. Right. So if I show a buyer 3 houses and they're not making an offer, I'm going to go, gosh, Jen, let's talk about this. What did we miss? You told me how important it is for us to get to Springfield by the end of December. I was certain that one of these 3 houses was the one for you. And I must have whiffed. What did I miss? Because I've got to find out, guys, at the end of every one of my showing appointments, I'm either setting my next showing appointment with the expectation that something's going to change between now and the next appointment, or I'm writing an offer. I'm leaving that showing appointment with one of 2 things. I'm either making an offer for the buyer or I'm future pacing them on my calendar for my next appointment with some different expectations in place. Right, Jen?
It's exactly right. I mean, it's the number one mistake that I see buyers agents make is that they assume the responsibility, that they let the buyer assume the responsibility of sense of urgency. It is our job to move the buyer from the consult or strategy session to the closing table. It is on our timeline, right? It's their timeline, but if we know the timeline, we're moving through it. And I think what happens, the reason that we call someone and they're like, I bought with someone else, is because we let them future pace us, right? Or we just allowed it to just go away. And I think that's the number one mistake when buyers agents are like, gosh, I can't get them to move forward, because you're not asking the hard question. You're not moving them forward.
And if things change, we get it that time frames change, motivation changes. Jen, I know you say this often, and we talk about this a lot in our mega buyer agent course, our group program, is that when the buyer might not be moving forward, as the buyer agent, it's easy for us to assume we've missed criteria. We're like, okay, well, if you need 4 bedrooms, how about 3 bedrooms? If you need this, how about this? And it's often the motivation or time frame we didn't dig deep enough, or we're not asking questions about, that are causing that block. So again, gosh, Jen, we saw these 3 houses. I was certain that they were the right house for you based on what we talked about in our strategy session. What did I miss? If I didn't miss anything, awesome. Okay, well, I appreciate your feedback. So what are you looking for we haven't seen yet? Because I know you share with me how important it is for you to get to Springfield by the end of December. And quite frankly, we're on a time clock. It's December 1st. And I know we can get you there if that's truly where you want to go. And you know, if that's changed, that's okay too. So what, as your agent, what am I missing? And if the buyer in that moment's like, you know, we just re-signed a lease for 3 more months. Thank you for letting me know that. I don't want to continue to push you through my sales funnel and work towards getting you a house in December if you have another plan. And those hard questions don't always feel good, guys, because as the buyer agent, we don't want the buyer to say, oh, Tammy, you're being too pushy. You know, a Crystal, no, that is what I want. You're not working hard enough for me. We don't want the buyer to come back to us and say, well, I'll go find somebody who will show me houses if I can't move until March. Great. I wish you all the best. Actually, that's what I do. You know, like, we want to make sure our motivation matches their motivation, but we also have to truly understand their motivation first. And asking the hard questions consistently is what's going to get us to next with that buyer. So I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but I think we also talked about the future pacing with that asking the hard questions. We want to always make sure our buyers are aware of not only what happens next, but our involvement in the next step, right? When we leave a buyer consultation or a strategy session, I'm leaving that consultation with my first showing appointment on my calendar. If they're ready, willing, and able to buy, I'm leaving, even if it's a tentative appointment, because they might have some homework first. They need to sign their buyer rep. They need to get pre-approved, whatever that looks like. I'm leaving that conversation with either that first showing appointment, or at least a follow-up call on my calendar. So so they know when to expect to hear from me next. Same thing about the showings. When I leave a showing appointment, I'm either writing an offer or they're on my calendar for the next date and time. Even if it's tentative, I want to give my existing clients priority time in my schedule. So that way I'm not reactive. They don't have to call me and say, hey, Ash, this house just popped up. Let's go see it. I already have time on my calendar to show them a house. Make sense? And then the finding inventory, Jen, you touched on this earlier. That's kind of how we show up as a fiduciary. That's a mindset thing too, on being proactive around the market, on what am I doing every day to find that one house for John? Or am I waiting for John to send me a house he found online that I can also find for him? And he's like, hey, let's go see this. Very different things. So Jen, I know we got to keep moving on. We're going to breeze through this real quick so we have time for Q&A. I don't want to say our token phrase, but you and I talk often about setting and managing expectations. So as a buyer agent and staying in a positive mindset space, how do setting and managing expectations impact us as agents and the client?
Well, I think when we set and manage expectations, we're setting ourselves up for success, right? And I do think people potentially get tired of us saying this. However, if we're working with buyers, they need to know the roadmap of what success looks like, right? Everyone wants to know where they're going, right? I oftentimes know how to drive from point A to point B, and I still put it in my Google Maps because I want to see if there's a faster way to get there, right? Like I kind of want to see if I can beat the time by a minute, but that's another day or another story. But they want to know what the roadmap is. How do we get there? So we've got to prepare the buyer. Where does it start? It starts in the strategy session. Sarah and I made a language pattern shift at the beginning of this year from buyer consult to strategy session. The market that we're in takes a strategic agent with a great relationship with our client to win in this market, right? So we come to the strategy session with this information, and we're going to use a combination of story, right? What's happened with our other buyers, successful stories and failure stories, right? And we're also going to come with data. We're going to prepare them for how to compete in this market. How far over list price will they have to go? What other things will they have to potentially waive? Is it inspections or appraisals or an appraisal gap? We're talking to all of them about it in the strategy session. So we've got something coming up in 2 weeks where we're going to talk about the perfect offer starts in the strategy session, right? That's where the offer starts. The offer doesn't start when they're emotionally attached to a house and they're not prepared with what it's going to take to win. We also want to talk to them about how many houses are we going to show them? Sarah, in my experience, most of our buyers, if I ask you enough questions a day and I really figure out what it is that you're after, what you want, what you need, what's the non-negotiable, most of my buyers, I find, write their offer on the first or second house that we take a look at. I'm setting the expectation with Sarah of, we may only look at 1 or 2 houses. It's not your grandma's market where we had 40 houses to take a look at or 10 houses to take a look at. We also might talk to them, Sarah, about how many offers we're going to write.
Mm-hmm.
It's different in Springfield than it is in Houston. I would imagine in Houston, it's different in different price points.
Yeah.
So this information is different based on the client that you're talking to. Is that right?
No, you're absolutely right. And I think it's, we set the expectation based on what we're seeing in the market. And that's all, like, those are all the pieces of the strategy on how we're going to approach the market. And I think the bigger piece of that too is making sure that as a buyer agent, we can maintain that mindset space we need to be in to thrive in any market when we're working with buyers that are understanding of what has to happen for us to win them a home. Like this market is, any market is not for every single buyer. Yet we don't want to find that out after we've already shown them 45 houses. And you should never show a buyer 45 houses, but we'll talk about that later.
But yeah, Sarah, and I think when you look at it, for our team, we're looking at it, we're saying if our buyer loses out on after the first offer, we're really looking pretty hard at off-market properties, right? Yeah. After the second offer, we're doing some pretty extreme activities around dialing or door knocking, and keep in mind, being respectful of COVID requirements where you're at. But we're doing some pretty significant activities to manage that mindset. Because guess what, guys? When production is high, anxiety is low. That includes you as the agent. So if I'm proactively going to find my buyer a house, I am less anxious about the outcome of what's going to happen, right? I feel better.
Well, we're all control freaks. I am. Amy, I know you are. Jen, I know you are too sometimes. But when we can control the outcome at the best we can, right? That also helps us, I think, be less anxious. Because I mean, anxiety really is the fear of the unknown. That's right. My MAPS coach and I talk about that all the time. So different story about that, but here we are.
And then I think we also have to set the expectation about how often are they going to hear from you and from your team, right? And that's all along the process. But if you do what Sarah said on the last slide and you're forward pacing them, that's never a conversation because they know what to expect next. Tammy can talk to you about every conversation, right? At the end of every conversation, we say, here's what to expect next, right? They know when to hear, they're going to hear from you. And you might also set the expectation of how you're going to communicate. I would let the buyer choose. Do they prefer text or email or call? What does that look like?
And I think this works really well. I know I've personally experienced this when my kids were a little bit younger, and I would let my clients know, between the hours of, 4 and 8 p.m. on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays, you might not get a hold of me. And the reason for that is that's my protected mom time, right? I have to protect my time with my family just as much as I do with my clients. And because I would set that expectation and I would hold the line on it. That's, again, the setting and the managing. If a client texts me at 5 o'clock during my family time, I wouldn't respond. Even though if I could, I had my phone with me, whatever, we teach our clients how to treat us. So I think a lot of that, as far as staying in that positive mindset space, is making sure that we're setting expectations on not only when the buyer can expect to hear from us, but when they can expect to not hear from us and what's important about that. And then they start to respect those boundaries. Because I know, guys, I've woken up to texts before from clients, calls at 7 a.m. Oh my gosh, Sarah, this house, I've got to see it. And my natural instinct and sense of urgency has been like, yes, let's do it. It's gonna be great. And then I'm just creating a problem for myself. So anyway, Jen, I know we got a lot to cover still. We have 1 minute left. So good news. So guys, we want to also share with you, if you've heard anything today, which I trust that you have, that's of value for you and your buyer business, we want to invite you guys to join us in our group coaching program. We launch on January 5th, which just before this call, Jen and I realized that Christmas is in 3 weeks. Holy cow. And we have a lot of Amazon shopping to do. At the same time, January 5th is not that far away. So if you're looking for a way to jumpstart your buyer business in 2022, you can actually, I'm super fancy, scan the QR code, sign up to join our group program. The investment, guys, is $198 for 6 weeks of Jen and I talking through all kinds of things about your buyer business, from tactical stuff in the buyer world to growing and building a buyer team, leveraging through a showing agent. We've got a lot of content we pack into 6 weeks, and we'd love to see you guys there. So you can also go to mapscoaching.com/group to join us, but you can also scan this fancy QR code that I made on an accident. And here we are, because that's easier for people who know what to do with QR codes. Okay. Q&A. We've got maybe 30 seconds for a question. So who has a question that they want to hop off mute and share, or you can jump in the chat box real quick and drop a question in the box as well. Or even if it's not a question, how about an aha from today's content? We want to hear from you.
Hi guys, I'm Kimberlyn. I saw you
Hi,
kind of
Kimberlyn.
waiting for someone to say something. I think a great aha that I took from this with being a buyer's agent on a team is feeling like I can still be that person to say, hey, this is my protected time as a mom, because I struggle with that, if I'm being transparent. If I see that my client is extremely aggressive, right, and they're wanting to go look at this property, I kind of feel anxiety, like if I don't go right now, then we're going to miss this deal. But I think that it's great what you said, to set the expectation in the beginning, because your clients will treat you how you allow them to. So that was really great.
They absolutely will. And Kimberlyn, I know you're not alone in that, right? Jen always says, be where your feet are. And especially the time with your family and your kids, and that protected time, when you set the expectation with your clients and also future pace them on your calendar for showings, that could help eliminate some of that feeling that you have. So I appreciate you sharing that. All right, guys and gals, we're a minute over. Rodrigo, I think we did okay on time. We did our best. But so guys, join us in January. You can watch this back. I know Rodrigo will send it out to you guys. You have the recording. You can watch it back. We want to hear from you as well. Jen and I are both very accessible. So reach out to us. We want to be here to support your business as well. We've got another webinar coming up on the 15th of December. So be on the lookout for an email from that with some great content on the strategy session and how to compose the perfect offer. You'll see some content from Jen and I. We do a call for maps around the holidays on the 23rd of December. Jen, I think, is our scheduled call for that. And of course, we have our group program launching on January 5th. So we'd love to see all of you. And if we don't, that's okay too. Have a wonderful holiday season, and best of luck to you guys in crushing your goals in 2022. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.